आवाज आ रही है इसमें क्लियरली? ठीक है, रेडी? ठीक है जी. Okay, so good morning guys. Formally we are starting the class now. Let's ignore the elephant in the room at the moment, and we'll just recap what we had done in the previous class before we go ahead. Anybody wants to try to recap? Nobody remembers anything. Last year, it's last year's class. We had a class a year ago, right? Technically speaking. Okay, so I'm just recapping the key points. I'm not sure if you received the notes or not. There was a PDF file which I had sent to Dr. Kumar Puja as he had asked her. So you'll get it in a. So they're working out a mechanism. So the notes have been shared like I promised. There's a PDF file which I'll share with you guys. So otherwise, you guys can make a WhatsApp group. I'll drop it on it. That's not an issue. Okay, so we had covered in the previous class, we had covered what is management, why do we need to study it, stakeholders, and examples of managerial action. So we are going to move ahead from that point. We are going to look at today, we have three major topics that we want to look at. Wrap up what is a manager, what is management, what is an organization, and what is leadership, the role of leadership and an organization, how these two intersect. And doing this will finish off our unit 1, and in the next class then we can start with unit 2 depending on how we are able to complete today. So as always, I need your participation to make this class effective. So we'll start with the first point. Now, what do you think? You guys are all studying to be managers, you're doing a BMS course. So what do you think is the role that a manager does or management does? What are the basic tasks that management as a group of people in an organization is going to be doing? Any idea? So I'll write them down as well. Yeah, any idea? Managerial tasks. What does the management do? So let's say one function we have. Let me just dump this one. Yeah, planning is always the first one. What do you guys mean by planning? We'll be covering planning more in unit 3, I think, is when planning is there in your syllabus. So we'll be covering it in unit 3 in more detail. But I'm just giving you an overview. So planning is one task. What else does the management of an organization do? So let's take SOL as an example. So what does the management, in this case, the coordinators and the course coordinators and all who are getting all these things set up, connecting with you, communicating with you, getting me the timetable, getting the whole setup ready. So what do those guys do? So one is planning. What else do they do? Organizing. Yes. What else? Organizing, directing. I would use the word instead of staffing. Let me use the word controlling. And what would be the last thing? The last thing that we'll be covering is that this is the part which I want to do in today's class in more detail, which is leading. So planning is basically setting up the plans of the organization, setting up the vision. So more of this that we have been covering right now, you will be covering in OB. Leadership and all, you'll have more in OB when you have OB in your SEM 2 or SEM 3, depending on how your structure is there. Organization behavior, you'll have a paper for that. And these are some of the principles that will be elaborated more upon there. And depending on your syllabus, you should also have a paper on HRM where the staffing part, which you guys were referring to, will be covered in more detail. For us, we are just giving an overview. So, planning, organizing, controlling, basically getting everything settled and managed, and leading. So, these are the key things that we will be talking about. So, therefore, now, when you look at these things, now, if you guys become a manager in the future, which is exactly what you guys are studying for, what tasks do you guys think you would be doing? Some similar to what we've discussed. So, in order to achieve those tasks, what are the skills and personality traits that you have to have as future managers in order to be successful at your job? Anybody wants to try? What would be those skills that you would need to have when you are performing such functions in your organization? You have to have communication skills. You will have to have observation skills. What else? You will have to have leadership skills. What else? Supervision. So I'm thinking, let me not use the word planning, I'm thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing, then I will translate it into action later on. What else? So let me talk of the traits. So one is good communication skills. Second would be good powers of observation. What else? Analysis, confidence. What else? And the most important thing that you will need to have as a manager is interpersonal skills. What I would typically say, for example, getting work done from somebody. Like I said in the last class, the most difficult thing in the world is getting work done from somebody else. Especially like we discussed, what does an employee want? Less work, more money. And what does an employer want? Less money, more work. So when we try to match that as a boss, this is the most important thing. And for you to have this, you have to have communication skills, you have to have a good personality, you have to have respect within the organization, you have to create what are called networks within the organization, you have to have friends with you who will do extra work for you because you tell them to do it. Why? That is where interpersonal things come in. Why would you do something extra for somebody? Let's say somebody tells you to do task X. Why would you do X plus Y? Why would you do something extra? बहुत बारी होता है people will talk to you, अच्छा ये काम भी कर देना. Do you end up doing it? Who do you do it for? Could be fear. Motivation की बात नहीं हो रही है. This time it is part of motivation. But what is it that entices me to do something extra for somebody when he or she is telling me to do something? This is where interpersonal skills come. So let's say I'll give you an example. So let's say I need something put up on my college website. Okay, so we have a website administrator who's going to do it. Now, what would be his typical response if I tell him what are my office hours? Say for example 9 to 5:30. अब 9 to 5:30 में मुझे जो मर्जी बोलो I will do. But if I have to get extra work done, will he or she do it if I don't have a relationship with that individual? Would you do it if I don't have a relationship with you guys? But you'll do it for a friend. You'll do it for a colleague. You'll do it for somebody whom you know will help you later on down the road. Are you getting my point? You will not do it for Tom, Dick, and Harry. And who are you going to do it for? For somebody who has good interpersonal skills. And interpersonal skills for a leader, I won't use the word leader, let me stick with the management term boss, is also very important because fear has a limitation in getting work done. Why do I say that? Why do I say fear has a limitation? One of the fears is no, he's absolutely right. You'll threaten me with dismissal. You don't do this work, I'll fire you. Few days I'll be scared of it. But if you keep saying it again and again, okay, fine, fine. The point is वो डर खत्म हो जाता है. इतना मत डराओ कि वो डर खत्म हो जाए. Which is why we say fear is just one tool of motivation. It starts off with fear. He or she has the response, he or she has the position of power, they can fire me, they can punish me, they can send me to do a job which I don't want to do, they can post me in a remote location. This is fear. But beyond that, fear doesn't get you to work extra. You will work extra only when you are self-motivated. And one of the ways while you will be motivated is who is telling you to do what. If I tell you to do something and there's a colleague of mine who tells you to do the same thing, you will you perform the same for your for each teacher that you have encountered in your life? Would you perform the same? You're all just out of some of you are just out of school. You had that school experience. Teachers would have told you to do a variety of tasks. Would you do it for everybody? Who would you do it for? You'll have a favorite, you'll have somebody you respect, or you'll have somebody who's an irritant. इसका काम कर दो ही नहीं तो सिर खाएगा. That's also a logical point that goes at the back of your mind. So when we talk of management, these are a few things which I want you guys to keep in mind as we go ahead. Okay. Now, so this is the managerial skills part. Let's come to the second part, which is the organization. So, what is an organization? We discussed it in the class previously. So, the organization is basically a group of people जो हमने लास्ट क्लास में किया था सब वाइप आउट हो गया साल भर में एक्चुअली 1 year everything is wiped off सारे लोग if I remember the faces all of you were there in class you are supposedly paying attention right so where what is the answer we had discussed this question what is an organization हाँ यहाँ तक तो मैंने भी बोला था what beyond that the group of people working together to achieve a common goal or task, whatever word you want to use, the meaning is the same. From an organizational perspective, it's basically a group of people coming together to do a work. Okay. Now, आपने ये term सुना ना organization structure, hierarchy, all these terms you've heard of. So, what determines the structure of an organization? What are the factors? I'll give you one example. So let's say the first point is size. So if it's a huge organization versus a small organization, how would the organization be structured? You guys tell me. Can it be the same structure? Why not? आपके पास एक let's assume the organization is like a bus and another one is like a car. दोनों सेम रोड पे चले दोनों के व्हील्स है दोनों में एक इंजन है दे हैव अ स्टीयरिंग व्हील दे हैव ब्रेक्स दे हैव सीट्स व्हाट्स द डिफरेंस size so here this is the point so when you talk of an organization which is big in size it has its own specific needs so for example if you look into a bus chances are you usually find a helper or a conductor in the bus assisting the driver. It's very rarely that you'll find a bus in which the driver is driving alone. But in a car, do you need a helper? Only if you are in the learning phase, but once you've become comfortable and you've become proficient with your driving skills, you don't need somebody with you. You can drive on your own. That's an analogy. I know it's a weak analogy, but this is the best one that I can come up with. That if it's a huge organization, why is controlling more important in a bigger organization than in a smaller organization? So let's say we have this class of 17 students. How easy it is for me to look at everybody? Very easy. We are all in the same room. We are in a flat organizational structure. I can see you, you guys can see me. We can interact with each other. But assuming this was one of those big classes in a semi-tiered auditorium where you have 100, 150 students in the room, would I be able to communicate with all of them? Who would I be able to communicate with? Only the ones who are showing interest. Because I genuinely don't have time to involve every 150 students in connecting with me. But when I have only 17, 18 people in the class, I can make the effort and that effort will be successful in trying to have a one-on-one interaction with you guys. Are you getting my point? So some of you will be participating more, some of you will be participating less. That's not my point. My point is that I, as the leader of this organization at the moment, can have eye contact with all of you. But if it's a big organization, let's say we take an organization like the biggest one which I can think of right now in India is the Indian Army. Let's take the Indian Army. So can the chief of army staff, who I think should be General Navarane at the moment, I could be wrong, can that individual look at each and every member of the organization? So in the army, what is the organization structure that is followed? It is delegation ke saath, the term that we are going to use is hierarchy. So there's the top guy, and so on and so forth. So, isme, for example, if I give the Indian Army example, you have the Chief of Army Staff, Then you have, let's say, the chief of the northern command, chief of the southern command, chief of the eastern command. Three commands, three theaters. They are the chiefs, and then progressively it goes down till it reaches the point of the lowest jawan or the lowest soldier in the organization. And obviously that chart cannot fit on this, but you get the picture. But when I take a small startup, a small, lean, efficient, fast, so for the Indian Army, does a flat managerial structure work? It just doesn't work because one of the biggest problems is size. We'll come to other factors. There are around 7, 8 factors which we will be covering. So size is one of them. What else? Then you have, say, the level of technology. So now if I'm Britannia, for example, I make bread, or I'm Hindustan Times, I distribute newspapers. So मेरा organizational structure क्या है? I've got my editorial team, the guys who write the stories, who design them, who finalize the newspaper. Then it's sent to printers, and from printers it comes to your newspaper wala bhaiya, who comes in the morning to throw the newspaper into your home. Right? Now, can Hindustan Times change this structure? ठीक है, we are experimenting with what you say, drone deliveries. Imagine you get up in the morning and there's a drone that smacks a newspaper into your face with a rubber band on top of it and it throws it into your home the way the newspaper wala bhaiya does. Especially those of you who live in flats, one over the other, the bhaiya has actually a very good throwing arm. इतने तो एक फास्ट बॉलर की आर्म इतनी अच्छी नहीं होती जितनी भैया की होती है, नीचे से it will go to the 5th floor and it will reach there and it will hit you on your drawing room door, will make a big noise and you'll wake up, what the hell happened? But that's the reality. Now, can technology change this structure for Hindustan Times? Not at the moment. So for them, this is necessary. But for example, if I'm an organization, let's say I am, okay, let's take this one. Let's say I'm TCS. They are doing very well right now. Yesterday, day before, they've got a 10,000 crore profit and they've distributed it amongst their employees by increasing their salaries. Perfect. I'm not getting into the motivation part right now. But if I have TCS, can TCS follow this? Yes, they have to because they are a big organization. But this is not the only structure that will work for them. What they will have to do is they will have to have a hybrid system where the teams, for example, these guys work as flat teams. So every member of the team talks to each other, connects with each other, interacts with each other. But you will have one head of sales in North America, you will have one head of sales in Europe, you will have one head of sales in Asia Pacific. That is also necessary because they are big in size. But if they are not, then they have to have what we call as, so there's this term you will keep hearing in management called cross-functional. Have you heard this term before, cross-functional? हमने last time याद है we did the functional management, HR, marketing, sales, manufacturing, supply chain, all those things. So for example, let's say I want to launch a new car. Let's say I'm Maruti. I want to launch a new car. I've created a team. Wouldn't it be better that I have teams, that the members of the team are from each and every part of the organization? Or should I just make a team with the sales guys? Because they are the ones who are going to actually sell the car. Or should I make a team only with the manufacturing guys because they are the ones who are going to make the car? Or I make a team with only R&D guys, they are the ones who are going to design it and deliver it and engineer it. Why should I have a cross-functional team? Why not follow the hierarchy? Supply chain वाला इतना काम करेगा, HR वाला इतना करेगा, marketing वाला इतना करेगा. Everybody will operate in their own silos. Silos का term सुना आप लोगों ने कभी silos? Okay, how many of you have been to Mayapuri flyover? वहां पे FCI का गोडाउन देखा है? FCI का गोडाउन देखा है? उसमें क्या डिजाइन है उसका? These are called silos, basically, जिसमें तो big stacks in which they keep grains. So silo mentality in the management terminology means कि अगर मैं मार्केटिंग का हूं और आप अनदर टर्म वुड बी ब्लिंकर्स. जैसे एक घोड़ा होता है, घोड़े के ब्लिंकर्स होते हैं. Why does a horse have blinkers on his eyes? So that they don't get distracted. वहां पे it makes sense. But if I'm a marketing guy and I just simply say, okay, I'm going to live my life like this. No HR exists, no operations exist, no sales guys exist, no supply chain guys exist, no manufacturing guys exist. Can I do that? What am I doing? I'm creating a problem for myself down the road. So when a company like TCS operates, they will have to have hierarchies. But when it comes to the product development and customer delivery teams, they will have to have cross-functional teams at the customer's location. वहां पे मैं कस्टमर को ये नहीं बोल सकता, okay, look, I am an engineer who is into the design of the app, but I don't know how the network works. Okay, let me call up my colleague in India and get back to you. Will you as a client tolerate this kind of behavior? Obviously not, and especially when you're paying millions and millions of dollars for their expertise. You want everybody to be there. You want the task to be resolved rapidly. You cannot say, okay, you call up India, okay, then the network guy says, okay, this is the problem. So somebody else says, oh, we need to talk to the sales guys, we need to repackage. And then it keeps going back and forth. That will not work for TCS as an organization. So they will have to have a hybrid system. But when I have a small startup, you've all seen startups, D2C brands bhare pade hain Amazon pe. I'm sure many of you have subscribed or purchased their products. Also, what is the characteristic of a startup? Or those of you who have relatives and family members who have their own businesses, what is the characteristic of that individual? Or that limited number of people. So those 5-6 people in the room or in that company are going to do everything. So I may be the so-called CEO, but I will come in the morning and be sweeping the floor of the office. Though I am the CEO, my designation is CEO, but in that organization, that is called a hierarchy hybrid. The manager is approachable, the door is open, you can walk into the manager's office anytime. That's where the term flat hierarchy comes in. So you will have the manager, which is better? Which is better? This is A and this is B. Which is better? Depending on the organization, for a startup, B is much better. But for a big organization, A is much better because what A does is, remember, it gives you control. Controlling is also important. Are you getting my point? So this is the organizational hierarchy. So we've had size. So I'll just run through the other parts. I'll share the notes anyways, and they are in your SLM as well. So size, environment, dynamic, abundance of resources. So it depends on, so you can have those examples. I just wanted to give you a flavor of this whole portion. Okay. Now, coming to the next point. Okay, so is this fine? So I'll just dump this. Now, you guys tell me what are the stages or the basic steps through which an organization is formed. So can you chart, let's say, we know how you guys have grown up. So everybody starts life as an infant and then you go to nursery school, you go to KG, you go to your school, you go to your graduation and you move ahead in life, right? So that's the growth path. Now, how does an organization begin its life? So when you want to start a company tomorrow, let's say you are, कौन सा example यार? Let's say you are again sticking to my IT example only. Let's say you are Narayan Murthy. So you have the technical skills, or let's say you are, let me take another example, you are Bill Gates. So you are right now an undergraduate like you. 40 years ago, Bill Gates was exactly like you, an undergraduate who had a great idea. So the organization typically starts off with either a product or a service which I want to sell to you. So let's say I was on the way when I was coming driving down. So there's this company whose products I buy. It's not a very old company, so it's a startup called Blue Tokai Coffee. Have you heard of the name of this company by any chance? Blue Tokai Coffee Roasters. Any of you ever been to Ambience in Gurgaon? वहाँ पे नीचे they have an outlet. They are a coffee company, like say for example Nescafe would be, for example. But in this case, they don't make instant coffee; they make specialty coffee. So small sizes, small customers, targeted. So marketing जब आप लोग करोगे, आपको मेरे ये example उस टाइम पे समझ में आएगा. But when I take the example of Blue Tokai, for example, they started out live because one of the founders felt कि इंडिया में अच्छी कॉफी नहीं मिलती. And the only coffee you would get in India is Nescafe or Brew, which are your national level chains who are giving you a standardized product all the time. You buy Nescafe today, you buy Nescafe 5 years ago, you buy Nescafe 5 years later, the taste remains the same. If not same, I would use the word very similar, right? Because they are a consistent national chain. So somebody woke up in the morning and said, okay, this coffee is horrible. And I agree with him, Nescafe is horrible, sorry. But Nescafe, I don't like the taste, personal choice. So in my personal choice, now there is a need. So the person started hunting for a good quality coffee, sourcing directly from the farmers. But he also realized that there are lots of customers like Tushar who want gourmet coffee, good quality coffee, not your normal Nescafe brew stuff, but they don't have the skills to procure it. I don't know any coffee farmer in Kerala. I don't know a single coffee plantation in anywhere in the country. So मैं वो कॉफी कहाँ से लाऊं? So he started offering a service as well. So for Blue Tokai coffee, it became both the product, the physical coffee that I receive at home, and the second thing became the service, the delivery of the coffee at my home. Right now, they use social media and other methods to interact with me and communicate with me. So the point is that every organization starts off with a particular product or service. So now, can I turn you guys into an organization right now? We are also 17 people. But what is it, the key factor, the first point which will bring us together? Is there anything right now which will bring us together? Can I say that these 17 people, 18 people in this room are an organization without a product, without a service? The motive is attending the class. We are not doing anything beyond that. Right? So I cannot call you an organization. But okay, if 17, 18 of you sit on Monday and think, okay, yeah, there is this problem in the education industry where we need notes. Let's work together to create a system where we can have students sharing notes with each other. Let's do a business, let's start up together. Then you become an organization. Right now, you are just a group of people sharing ideas. You are not working for a common purpose. Are you getting the difference between the two terms? So the organization always typically starts with one starting point. Starting point क्या है? A product or a service which the founder tries to sell. So again, going back to the Bill Gates Microsoft example, Bill Gates started out life in his parents' garage. His first sales happened from his parents' garage. Steve Jobs also started in his parents' garage. So अगर आपके पास garage नहीं है, that means you cannot become Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. That is the humorous part, but no, that may not always be the case. So coming back, so Steve Jobs, so take Apple. Who were the two co-founders of Apple? One was Steve Jobs. Who was the other guy? अभी सुना है? हाँ जी? न्यूटन तो स्वीटी died 400 years ago. आइजैक न्यूटन की अगर आप बात कर रहे हो तो the co-founder is actually a very private individual. He doesn't appear like Steve Jobs was the face of the company. Steve Wozniak was the brains of the company. Google करना Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. आपको उसकी शक्ल देख के लग जाएगा that this is a person who is not cut out for public speaking. He's happy being a computer engineer. Nothing wrong in it. He's happy being that. So they start out life with a product and service, and typically when you have a new, so let me take another example. Let's say you guys have come up with a new idea for, okay, how many of you are students in hostelers? How many of you stay on your own or you stay in hostels? You all stay with your families? Okay, let's say you have a group of people who are staying on their own, and they need what is called a tiffin service, meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Okay, so you guys, one of you decides that I will start a tiffin service for students who are living in this Kingsway Camp and North Campus residential area. Lots of thousands of students will come and stay here to study in the North Campus colleges. Okay, so that's a business opportunity. You have a product, you have identified कि क्या menu होना चाहिए, you identified the pricing, you identified lots of. I'm glossing over them. ये marketing में आएगा सारा. I'm just glossing it over क्योंकि हमारा यहाँ पे relevance नहीं है. So you decide to launch a tiffin service for students living in North Campus area. Now, who would be, typically speaking, who would be your first employees? Who would help you get the business off the ground? Typically speaking. You are the guy, आपको support कौन कर रहा है? Who is your first line of support? Always when you start a business, typically, who is your first line of support? Your parents, your friends, your neighbors, your family members. The close circle around you is your first helper. So the organization starts. It takes baby steps. So this is the birth of the organization. Friends and family members helping you. Say the organization goes to class KG. How do I take it to senior school in class 11th? Now the organization starts growing. So I have size, I have momentum, I have business growth. Now what happens typically is that I will have, so take for example, if I take Reliance. Dhirubhai Ambani started Reliance from a very small company, and today look at where it is. The organization, the people, look at where they are, right? So when Dhirubhai Ambani started, he started life with a very small business. His first employees were his close confidants and close associates. But as the size of the organization grew, did Dhirubhai, so one of the Reliance's key assets is their refinery in a place called Jamnagar, which I don't know if you guys know is India's largest refinery in the private sector. Okay, fine, right? Good. It's a huge complex. Huge B is a very small word for that complex. Okay, go there if you get a chance. Go and observe it from outside. Under, obviously we cannot go, but observe from the outside. It's a gigantic complex. Now, Dhirubhai Ambani is a trader at heart. Does he know all the technicalities of how to set up a refinery? He knows how to manage the business, but he doesn't know the technicalities, the nitty-gritties. So now the organization progresses from a product or service, then family, then it goes to professional managers. So head of accounts, head of HR, head of marketing. Dhirubhai Ambani cannot do all of it himself. And a good leader or a good startup founder is one who recognizes his limitations. क्योंकि अगर मुझे नहीं आता और मैं वो चीज करने जाऊंगा, my organization will, the growth of my organization will suffer. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि organization grow नहीं करेगी, but it will grow at a slower pace. जो आपको नहीं आता है काम, आपको टाइम लगेगा उसको सीखने में. That is the gap. We don't want that gap. So we will start hiring professional managers. So take for example, again going back to the Blue Tokayo example. I was just reading, अभी मैंने पूरा नहीं पढ़ा article, I was just reading the couple of headlines. So मुझे basically याद है उसका. So there were these two founders who started roasting coffee at home. Coffee को अगर आपको जानना होगा, you take coffee beans, you roast them, and then you put them into a machine and it gives you espresso, ले लो आप cappuccino, lots of variety. I'm not getting there. I'm not getting into my coffee high horse. मैं वहाँ नहीं जा रहा. But when the organization started, they knew कि हमें coffee roast करनी है. They knew कि एक machine है, हमने खरीदी, हमने roast कर ली. But are these guys professional coffee roasters? Are they professional coffee tasters? How do I grow? I need somebody with professional skills. That is how the organization grows, and that is when we come to the whole part of what is management, what is an organization, why do we need it? ये यहाँ से शुरू होता है. So this is where the journey starts. Okay. Then you have slow growth, and then you become a professional organization, which is then having its own hierarchies and its own organizational structures which we have covered so far. With me so far? Yes? थोड़ा सा तो look lively यार. Yes, no. इतना hangover अभी कल का क्या? Okay. We've covered the right ingredients, we've covered the people. Okay. Now, what are the key roles within an organization? So, the first key role we have is a leader, then we have the senior managers. Okay, so let me take an example. So, we have Tata Sons. You heard of this company, Tata Sons? Tata Sons is the holding company of all Tata Group companies. It's a legal method. मैं वहाँ नहीं जा रहा. I cannot explain it correctly right now. So Tata Sons is a holding company. Who is their head? In this case, it's Ratan Tata. Okay, he's the head of Tata Sons, the controlling company. Now, who is the second most important guy in Tata after Ratan Tata? Who is the CEO of Tata Steel right now? Typically in Tata Steel has the highest value in the organization because of size, money, revenues, whatever. It's a gentleman by the name of N. Chandrasekharan. He's the head of, right now also, I think he's also the head of Air India. After Tata has taken over, he's doing he's the head of multiple business ventures. So he's not the leader, but he is the senior manager, right? The big shot, the COO or CXO. The term is, you'll keep hearing this term, CXO. CEO तो सुना हुआ है आप लोगों ने, Chief Executive Officer. You have heard CTO. CTO सुना है कभी? CTO. CEO तो सुना है, CTO, Chief Technology Officer. CIO, Chief Information Officer. CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. So इसीलिए ये टर्म है CFO, Chief Financial Officer. ये तो सुना होगा CFO. So तभी हम, there's a common management term which we call CXO. X meaning the division or department that that person may belong to, but he's the top guy. He may not be the top most guy. He's not Elon Musk, but he is CEO of Tesla. But he's not CEO of Tata Sons. And Chandrasekharan is CEO of Tata Steel, not Tata Sons. So the leader remains on top. Okay. Then you have these super senior managers, which are our CXO. Then you have your normal managers, your territory managers, your plant manager, your HR manager. So you may have, for example, a senior guy would be the manager of the Jamshedpur plant, the head of the plant. But he's still a manager in that sense. Then you have your employees who could be skilled or semi-skilled. So you have a manager. So you are a skilled employee. You are a management graduate. Say, for example, you have graduated in the discipline of management in marketing. So you are a marketing graduate and you have joined the organization in its marketing department. So you are a skilled employee. But uske niche you will have lots of people who are, say, for example, the sweeper, the doorman, the guy who runs the canteen. Are you getting my point? Those are what we call semi-skilled. So these are the key roles within an organization. Obviously, there will be much more variety, but these are the broad key roles, 5, 6 key roles in the organization which we need to be taking care of, right? Okay. Then let's focus now on only the first role for today. These two roles, all these roles, the other ones, they are in unit 2 to 4, we will cover them. Leadership is not there in the unit, but I do want to cover leadership to an extent because it has an impact on all of these parameters. Okay. So let's look at the first point. Now, why do we need, so who is a leader? First of all, let's come to the question, who is a leader? Motivating the employees, who is setting the goals, who is commanding, who is directing, who has the vision. So I am Bill Gates, I am Steve Jobs. I realized that there are lots of people in this world who are willing to pay a price premium for a premium product, which is where Apple was born. And Apple, from its first day, has always tried to create itself as a specialty player rather than a mainstream player. Whereas Microsoft always saw itself as a mainstream player. So, how many of you have Apple laptops or desktops? Not many. How many of you have used Windows desktops? All of us. Everybody has done that. Because Windows is mass market. So, the organization is designed in a way to support its mass market behavior. Apple is designed in a way to create that whole premium feel to the organization. Okay, right or wrong, मैं भी वहां नहीं जा रहा कि Apple सही है या Microsoft सही है. No, I'm not going there. But the point is that when I'm a leader, so I, as Steve Jobs, I had a vision that if I make a product look very nice, it has a very slick user interface, it looks nice, it works nice, it is reliable, and it is good quality. If I charge a price premium, people are willing to pay for it. Whereas on the other hand, take Android. All of us have Android phones. Nothing wrong with it. It works perfectly fine. It has the entire ecosystem behind it. Nothing wrong with it. But how many of you have Android from one company? Android is sold in to multiple companies. So you have a Samsung, you have an HTC, you have a Xiaomi, you have a Sony. Everybody has Android in it. But Apple is the only one who has the iOS. Again, different visions of the future. But Steve Jobs had this vision in the mid 1990s, and which was the first product that started showing that vision of Steve Jobs. Revamped Apple का पहला product क्या था? Which is now dead, by the way. Have you heard of this product called the iPod? The small music player that came. Apple was the first one to launch a digital music player with a digital music subscription, which today is known as iTunes, their digital music subscription library. Good or bad, don't know. But the philosophies that Steve Jobs started in the early or the late 1990s and early 2000s, 2007 में iPhone आया था. 15 years later, it is still working and still selling in huge numbers. That was the vision. But was Steve Jobs a guy who knew how to make an LCD screen? Was he a guy who knew how to make a 5G connection module? No, he's not an engineer. He's the one with the vision. So a leader is typically the one with the vision. Leaders are not the ones who are involved in majority of controlling activities. They're typically involved in, obviously it depends on the size of the organization. I'm going to qualify that at the first point. Like I said earlier, you may have an organization where you are the CEO, but you're still coming and sweeping the office in the morning because there isn't anybody else. You don't have the money to hire another staff member. You are a startup. Fair enough, perfectly acceptable. So, what does a leader do? So, a leader is giving the vision, giving the direction. What else is the leader doing? Setting up the goals. And if we go with my Steve Jobs example, the leader sets the long term direction of the company. So Steve Jobs put Apple onto a completely different design trajectory. On the other hand, take for example, we take this. आप ये ले लो, एक और ले लो. Take this example. Mahindra Automobiles. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what was Mahindra known for? What was its product range? 15 years ago. They never made cars. They made what are known as jeeps. जिसे हम लोग jeep कहते हैं. आपकी ये Bolero. Their primary product range was the Bolero, where they were stuck to tier 2, tier 3 markets. Bolero K variants were their primary product range. But Anand Mahindra, the leader of that organization at that time, realized that where is the money? Is the money in making semi-agricultural, rural market vehicles? Or I go into the urban market and I start making vehicles where customers are willing to pay a price premium and they're willing to buy my products with the whole SUV thing that has taken off in the country, and they are going to be willing to pay a price premium for that product. And that is the time when Mahindra started moving up from Bolero to Scorpio. Better than the Bolero, but not an excellent car, but not a bad car compared to what it was previously. Today, look at where Mahindra is. The XUV 700, they've got a 2-year waiting list for some models, and there are people still willing to pay money to wait for 2 years for that vehicle. There's still people willing to do. So they've grown up the value chain. The leader has the vision, and he or she is then working with the senior managers and the employees to translate that vision into a product, into a service which the customer actually likes. Okay? So Mahindra, if I take the example of Thar, now if I take visually looking, the Thar is no different from the Mahindra CJ500. जो पुरानी महिंद्रा है वो वैसी लगती है, but the Thar is what, 16 lakh rupees. Original Jeep would be not even 4 lakh, 5 lakh rupees. What is the difference? This is where the development of the organization comes in. The growth, design, quality, suspension, softness, reliability, features. These are all how the organization grows up. So you start with a basic product, you develop, you refine, and then you improve yourself. That's a typical growth story of any organization for that matter. Yeah? Sorry, no idea. Right? So we have the leader. So he is setting the vision, and the leader is also setting the long-term direction of the company. Now, another problem, especially with family businesses, is this. Those of you who have family-run businesses, big ones. Let's take one which failed. Can you give me an example of a big family-run business which has failed, where the juniors or the descendants or the new managers have not been able to take the business forward and has died? Any idea? Yes, Atlas Cycles is a good example. Atlas, आपने शायद सुना होगा एटलस का, शायद शायद नहीं सुना होगा. हाँ जी, चलाई भी होगी सबने. Atlas was a very old company, but due to problems with the promoters and the problems with the family, they have died out. Another example would be Kinetic Group. Kinetic Honda जो scooter होता था, they've also died out for a variety of reasons. मैं वहां नहीं जा रहा अभी, ठीक है? But if the leaders, the descendants of the leaders, they don't take care, the company will not grow. Again, go back to my Dhirubhai Ambani Reliance example. Who has made Reliance become so big today? One is Dhirubhai Ambani himself. He set the vision of the organization. But who has taken it to the next step? Mukesh Ambani. But what about Anil's businesses? For a variety of reasons. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा it is a problem of skills. It could be market realities also. It could be the operating environment also. It could be any reason. My point is that if Mukesh Ambani does not devote his full attention and his full resources and full energies to the business, do you think it will survive and grow? Do you think if Anant and Akash, these two guys, or Isha, the three children of Mukesh Ambani, they have all their own businesses. Akash is heading Jio. Isha Ambani is heading the... कौन सा brand आ रहा है वापस अब, which they are bringing back? Reliance is bringing back one old Indian brand. And it's a cold drink जिसका brand है. तो सारे पेप्सी के हैं और या कोक के हैं. Have you heard of this company called Campa Cola? Reliance has bought rights to the Campa Cola brand, and they are now going to launch it with their own brand, because everybody like Tata also. आज से 20 साल पहले, 10 साल पहले, when I was your age, 20 years ago, Tata was nowhere in the consumer business. They were in manufacturing, they were making cars, they were making trucks, steel. That's it. Airline भी नहीं थी उनकी, consumer goods तो था ही नहीं. The only consumer goods Tata had was the hotels, the Taj hotels. That was one of their joint ventures, and Taj Mahal tea. That was their second consumer product, which consumers would interact with. Nothing. Today, look at where Tata is. Big Basket, 1mg, टाटा न्यू, आपका एयर इंडिया, Salt, they are in FMCG, they are in lots of different businesses today because they have also seen that where is the future? The future is in a unified company. So, say for example, I want medicine. Which is the app which I would typically tend to use? आप लोग कहाँ से अगर ऑनलाइन मेडिसिन मंगवानी है, which app would you use? Apollo we could try. Yeah, 1mg है. If I want grocery delivered at home, which are my 2 or 3 options? Big Basket. If I want consumer goods, I may end up buying from Big Basket own brands. They are cheaper a little bit. So Tata is moving into the consumer space. Reliance also sees a future in that same direction. But now, if Isha, Akash, and Anand, the 3 kids, don't perform well, what will happen to the organization? It may shrink, it may collapse, it may eventually die out also. सो इन दी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन लीडर्स के साथ ना एक टर्म आपको हमेशा ध्यान रखनी पड़ेगी, मैनेजमेंट में भी ये ध्यान रखना, transition. No employee who, whether he is the CEO or the most junior, most chaprasi in the organization, I'm using a very traditional term for that role, they they are not indispensable. Even CEOs and founders can be kicked out and replaced by somebody else. They are not indispensable. Can you give me an example of a company where the founders have been replaced after they have been bought out? Hanji? Raymond's. Yes. But that's a good example. Where else? Where else? Think. Think. Other examples? Twitter. Jack Dorsey. Where is Jack Dorsey? Nowhere. Where is Parag Agarwal right now? Nowhere. It's only that gentleman by the name of Elon Musk with his unique management style. I'll not use any other word except unique. Right? It has its own advantages, it has its own disadvantages. So हम वहाँ नहीं जा रहे हैं, ठीक है? But even the founder is not indispensable. Today, look at Microsoft. Is Bill Gates anywhere in the party? No. Steve Jobs doesn't exist anymore. Wozniak was never in the picture. But does that mean Apple has stopped working? Does that mean Apple has stopped growing? It's growing and growing and growing and growing. Every day they are growing. Are you getting my point? So, with a leader, leadership has transition. Nobody is here who is there, who is both permanent or indispensable. Both these things don't exist in the world of management. Don't even hope to be the person who is there unless you are like the Mahashi of MDH. He died about last year, 2 years back. COVID May he died. Not because of COVID, but because of age. You remember that uncle who used to come on MDH ki ads? He is the face of the organization. The Mahashe. It is called Mahashe the Hatti. He's named after the guy, and that's what he is. Let's not get into his story, but point is for him, he and MDH are linked closely together. But once he's died, does that mean MDH has died with him? Who's taken care of the transition? The professional managers, the ones who have started growing the company together. Are you getting my point? Right? So that's one part. So another thing that you need to look at is here right now we have been looking as the leader as a human being. But can you give me examples of organizations who have been leaders in their respective businesses? They have done new things. ये तो अभी हमने लोगों की बात की, people. Can you give me name the organizations who have been leaders themselves, pioneers? Can you give me a couple of examples? Anybody wants to try? Hanji? Marvel? Marvel Studios, yes. Disney? They were the world leaders, the first ones to have what we call the animated movie. The cartoon, Pixar, was the one who brought gems like the Toy Story to us. Which are the Toy Story is actually older than you as a movie. It was in mid 1990s. It's older than you guys. You are all what 2000. You are all models of this century. No, of this millennium. तो इस साइड के मॉडल्स हो ना आप तो सारे 2000 प्लस के मॉडल्स हो ना आप लोग तो सारे right? So that means that makes me 1,000 years older. Yeah, right. The way we said ki last year we had a class, now we have a class today. You have forgotten everything in 1 year, right? So you have to have also Pixar started off with the whole animation business. Today everybody does it, but Pixar is always regarded as the leader. Disney is always the leader, right? Take ESPN. ESPN was the world leader. Nobody did sports like ESPN does it today. Yeah, आपका Star Sports was the leader in bringing cricket to India. Cable TV and cricket, they were the leaders who brought cricket to the Indian households in the mid 1990s. And it exploded afterwards. So they were the leaders, they were the pioneers. Pepsi was the pioneer of cricketers as brand ambassadors. 1996 World Cup. And till then, till date, what is the nickname of the Indian cricket team? What is the nickname of the Indian cricket team? It reflects back to Pepsi's advertisements. They're called Men in Blue. Where does the blue come from? Initially, it came from Pepsi's advertisements. They were the ones who coined this slogan, Men in Blue. ये बात कर रहा हूँ मैं आपको 96 World Cup की. So it's 26 years now, and that association is still going strong. So the leader word here doesn't have to mean an individual. It can also be the entire organization. Take for example SpaceX. What is SpaceX doing? SpaceX सुना है ना आप लोगों ने नाम? What is SpaceX doing? What is their leadership? What have they done which others haven't done so far? I don't know if you guys are aware of space exploration and all, but SpaceX is the big name in that domain now. And SpaceX pioneered something which is called the reusable rocket. They have been able to do technologically when you fire a rocket or a satellite into space, the rocket on which it goes typically is destroyed. And the rocket is perhaps the most expensive part of the entire satellite launch process. So SpaceX innovated and they created a mechanism in which they can save at least 70% of the rocket can be reused, bringing the cost down for subsequent launches in the future. That is their innovation, which is why today, after government space launches, who has the maximum number of space launches? It is SpaceX. Right? So the leadership doesn't have to come from a person. The entire organization as a whole can also be a leader in particular domains. Or take, for example, this one. Have you heard of this company? Bayer? Make insecticides, pesticides, and all. They were the world leaders in bringing insecticides and pesticides to the world of farming, kickstarting the whole farming revolution, the growth of it. They were instrumental in that part. So you can be a leader in multiple ways. But for our purposes, we are going to stick with leadership in leadership of people, and we have certain traits for which I want you to give me examples, like always. Okay, so let me just jot down the key traits of a good leader. They also reflect in the key traits of a manager, but more in the leader part. So the first one that I said is courage. Resourceful. Okay, so these are about 6, 7 traits. There are more, of course, but these are the key ones which I have jot it down. Rest of all is there in the notes. I will share them with you. That's not an issue. So can you now give me examples of these 6 traits which have, these are the traits of leadership. Obviously, you will do more in this in OB again, like I'm saying. But I want to do this to give you a background of where the leader's role is within an organization. And after this class, we'll not come back to the role of leadership. Perhaps we'll touch upon it when we do unit 4, but we won't do it again. But I want to touch upon this whole thing of leadership because I feel that it is relevant for us. So these are the 6 traits. Traits समझ में आए? Vision, future orientation. Charisma is interpersonal skills. Courage is there, resourcefulness is there, innovation and analytical is always there. Okay. So, can you give me examples of leaders who fit under these traits? I can give you examples for all 6, of course. I have to. But can you guys do that? Can you give me examples of leaders who would fit in these 6 categories? Yes, we could have Bill Gates. Which category would you put Bill Gates in? Which category? Technical, we have one more. I should also write that actually. Let me put it that way. Sometimes you have to have technical skills as well. Okay, so we can put Bill Gates under technical part. Okay, give me examples of other leaders. And these examples could be from anywhere. So they don't have to be corporate examples. They can be examples from the world around you. It could be politics. It could be economics. It could be any other discipline. It doesn't have to stick with management. So anybody wants to try? Elon Musk, who you can put, I would put him here. Innovative. Courage here, I usually want to mean by innovation and risk taking alag hai. Courage here, I mean physical courage, not the risk taking ability. Nahi keh raha main. In the sense, you can have sportsmen, you can have leaders who are from the military background, sports stars. They could be examples where courage and physical strength come in more. Typically, courage ko I wanted to keep it under the domain of military courage. Courage in the adversity. हाँ जी? फिजिकल भी मैं करेज को मिलिट्री वाली साइड छोड़ना चाह रहा था. आई वाज कीपिंग इनोवेशन एंड रिस्क टेकिंग जो आप लोग रेफर कर रहे हैं. इलॉन मस्क फॉर एग्जांपल. Every leader also has to have an appetite for risk taking. So wo I wanted to keep it here, but you can link these two. They can be to an extent interlinked. So you are right, they can be interlinked as well. I agree with you. Okay. Another more example. So vision ke liye I gave you, for example, you can have JRD Tata, who set up India's first steel plant. Jamshedpur was entire built out of it. Then you have this is 1909 if I'm not wrong. उससे पहले से ही उस टाइम they started growth. Then there is this group called the Hindustan Shipyards, Walchas, a Bombay-based family, very big during the British Empire, and their Hindustan Shipyards were nationalized later on, separate story, but they invested in the vision. Bajaj, take for example Dhirubhai Ambani's vision of building Asia's largest refinery at that time, and till date it is one of the largest refineries in Asia, the Jamnagar refinery. Vision. They saw the future and they started building the future today. Take Jeff Bezos. He saw the future. Everybody wants things online or delivered at home. Amazon got created accordingly. Right? So vision is there. Okay, charisma. Can you tell me about leaders who have personal charisma, who had people follow them? ये आपको examples typically you will get them from the domain of politics. Typically, मैं आपको typical दे रहा हूँ. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, Kejriwal, to a certain section of the population, he resonates. So the charisma part here is it doesn't have to appeal to everybody. So say for example you take the prime minister of the country. There are lots of people who don't like him. There are lots of people who like him. Same way with say for example our CM. Different people have different approaches. I'm not saying that. The point is that a leader who has charisma will inspire people to follow him. He will not be able to inspire everybody to follow him, but he or she, sorry, will be able to inspire a large number of people to follow him. If we take with Mahatma Gandhi, there are lots of people who disagree, even then who disagreed with his methods. My college is named after one of the people who disagreed with his methods and who indulged in so-called violence, Shahid Sukhdev. Shahid Rajguru, Shahid Bhagat Singh, they thought that violence or military retaliation is one of the methods to go. At a time when Mahatma Gandhi was becoming a national symbol for his non-violent tendencies. Even then, people did disagree. It is not that disagreement is a new thing. But when you have a leader, a large number of people tend to follow the leader because he or she has good charisma. And that is one of the complaints which has been put against, if I'm just ending this whole political story here, is against, say, for example, there have been lots of commentators who say that Rahul Gandhi doesn't have the charisma that his father or his grandmother had. Many people say that. Some say he has it. Two sides of each coin, and this is where the political discussion stops. Give me more examples. So Mahatma Gandhi is one example which we can take. For example, Bhagat Singh, or go outside India. Go outside India. Nelson Mandela, absolutely correct. Hanji. Donald Trump has charisma, but the problem with Donald Trump, why I'm not taking him as an example, is because when charisma is misused, then it becomes a problem. So, other examples where we given, so say for example, Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi for that matter, here you saw charisma being used for good. In Donald Trump's case, for example, his charisma has not been used for all good purposes, especially with the whole controversy around his tax returns, the whole controversy with the US Capitol riots of January 2020. There have been lots of things which keep coming out. No, I'm not going there, but he has charisma. He at one point of time he was seen as the leader who would take America. And what was his campaign slogan? Do you remember? Make America great again. That was his campaign slogan. Fine, he did that. He resonated with a lot of people. But today, 2020 के आप कभी करना, if you guys get the chance, US का तो voter data आपको मिल जाएगा, Google करना. Look at the वहाँ पे क्या होता है? States vote for the president. They have a different system than what we have, for example. And the states which voted Republican were his major supporter base. But you look at in the 2020 elections, the ones who voted for him were the ones who voted against him in 2020 because he hadn't delivered. Mahatma Gandhi delivered. He promised Swarajya to whatever extent we agree to it or not, but he did deliver that through his non-violent methods. So charisma के साथ leadership के साथ सबसे बड़ा एक part आता है आपका, which is, so you cannot be a leader without actually having delivered something to your followers. A religious leader would give you spiritual satisfaction. A political leader may give you a certain goal. An economic leader may give you certain, say for example, GDP. I want to grow my economy. It will grow. So one of the examples could be, say, the leader of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew and his son have ruled Singapore for the past 50 years together. And they had a vision that we will make Singapore an economic powerhouse. Look at where Singapore is today. They had the charisma and then they had the deliverance in terms of economic growth. Doesn't always have to be political. Politics is the most easy one, but it doesn't have to always be political. It can be on other deliverance factors as well. That's where the charisma part comes in. Okay, let's take resourceful. Can you give an example? I can give you one. Have you heard of this gentleman by any chance? Morita. You have used products built by his company. All of you used, seen, observed. Many of you have products built by his company in your homes. Okay, I'll give you a hint. नहीं आंसर ही देते हैं हिंट क्या देना प्रॉपर्ली सोनी he was the founder of Sony. So in your homes you would see Sony stereos, TVs, right? That is what Sony makes. So Akio Morita was the leader, and when he started in 1940s after the devastation of Japan, he started from a single. His company started from a single room making radios from parts which they got from what we call in Delhi kabadiwalas. They were scavenging parts from scrap dealers and starting their business. And look at where Sony is today. Right? That's where resourcefulness comes in. So there are lots of examples. I have one to give you right now. Innovative हमने बहुत सारे कर लिए. These we have covered. Okay. Now, can you now give me examples of leaders who have lost their growth and momentum? I can give you company examples. Personal में मैं ज़्यादा नहीं जाना चाहता, but I can give you examples of companies which have lost their growth throughout the world. And one example I'll give you is for a company which has been growing rapidly in the world, Hyundai. Within the last month, December 2022, Hyundai became the third largest manufacturer of new cars in the world in the year 2022. And where were they? In the 1980s, nobody even looked at Hyundai. Nobody had even heard the name of Hyundai. And today, look at where they are from the growth perspective. But if you look at a major world leader who has died out, have you heard of these two brands? Sharp and Toshiba. They were the world leaders in their respective domains. Today, they are nowhere. They're nowhere because, for a variety of reasons, they started declining. So, leadership can also die out. Okay, take this one. Okay. अभी इसकी last week की anniversary in a sense it was just a repeat. Okay. Heard of this guy? Sahara Group. Look at where it is today. Then another of my favorite examples. Look at where Kingfisher is today. Nowhere, which is nowhere. And they were at one point of time the leaders in their respective domain. Our leadership temporary there were organizational issues, there were leadership issues, there were environmental issues, operating environment, business environment issues, not pollution, but business environment issues. The company collapsed. The company died out. And it was so bad that Kingfisher died so much, or it took out so much of money that the Malia family had to sell off their shares in the UB Group, which was their United Breweries, their flagship company. उनको वो भी बेचनी पड़ी, उसमें भी shares बेचने पड़े. Diageo, a European company, has now taken over the controlling stake of United Breweries, that big company that they had, their holding company. It can happen. They're not the only ones doing it. Then you have another one. Take another example. The real estate guys. They were the ones who made the Formula One track in Greater Noida, JP Group. They were the ones who made the Delhi Agra Expressway. Look at where they are today. Nowhere. They've died out. For a variety of reasons. We are not getting into reasons. But like I said, leadership has to be maintained. Because if you make wrong decisions today, in the future, you will be having problems with longevity. On the other hand, take DLF. Now, what is DLF's biggest asset? DLF तो सबने सुना हुआ है ना? What is DLF's biggest asset? building is never the asset. What is the largest asset? In their case, the asset is all the a big parcel of land in what is developing Gurgaon. Sona Road पे, ambience वाले area में, they've got huge land banks and they bought it at agri land rates, so like 5 rupees an acre or something like that in the 1980s. 5 rupees or 500 भी हो सकता है. Peanuts, let me call it peanut. Today, look at the prices of that particular area, how they have shot up through the roof. So again, investing in the future. Whereas for Sahara or JP, they were perhaps unable to, perhaps were incapable of, perhaps there were factors beyond their control. But they did tie up. Take another Indian example for this. Nokia is a very good example. They stopped innovating. They lost their momentum in innovation, and that Motorola again is a good example. Nokia, Motorola, and the fun fact with Nokia and Motorola is both of them are coming back as brands, but now are owned by Chinese companies. HMD Global owns Nokia. It's a Chinese company. Take another brand which is sold in India. MG is an old, it as a brand, it died out in the 1970s. It's an old British company. It started dying out in the 1970s. In 2004, the Chinese owners of the brand bought out the brand, and now they're using that brand to improve their own business and their own sales. So the brand survives. In this case, the brand was such a valuable thing that it survived vision. They bought it out when it was cheap. Today they are using it. Take, for example, Tata and Jaguar and Land Rover. Tata buying out that product. Jaguar and Land Rover, they bought out. And they knew that there is growth potential in that business, right? Then let's take a few more examples to just cover up this point. Okay. Now, now let's look at, so we've had these examples. So there are these two traits of leadership which we need to talk about, and then we'll end the whole leadership story here. So old school here and new school here refers to basically the age of the company. So if I take, for example, Tata. Tata as a company in India, I would call it an old school company. It still believes in to an extent with friendly relations with their employees. They will not have a lot of union issues. They will take care of their employees. They will deliver their salaries on time. They'll be ethical. But they'll be like a parent. A parent gives you everything, but the parent also demands obedience, and he demands your work. So it is not like that Tata is going to be completely stupid and let you live without doing any work. But they are more caring. It's a more old-fashioned way of doing things. A modern manager would be like, say for example, Elon Musk and Twitter would be an example of a modern new school managerial interaction. I would use the word hire and fire, but I would use the word where they are focused on the growth of the organization in a particular direction. So, in order to achieve it, they'll be willing to lay off people, they'll be willing to do many things, they'll be willing to take lots of risks for that growth to come in. And a modern leader typically will be more tech savvy. An old school leader will be typically who's inherited his company from his family, a second generation, third generation owner of the business who is now taking it forward. So there are just two styles of leadership that go on. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So let's say we have in old school, we would have, say, versus तो नहीं होगा. In new school we could have what this whole list, so we can share it with you. Would be this one. Ratan Tata versus, I won't use the word versus, sorry. An example would be Michael Dell. Who is Michael Dell? The founder of what is Dell Computers. And he was an innovative guy. He completely revolutionized the way computers were manufactured and sold in the 1990s when that company was on the growth path. Today, Dell is everywhere. Okay. Okay. Then you have this one. Okay. Have you heard of this guy? Heard of this guy? Okay, heard of this guy? Albert Bourla. Okay, how many of you have got a Covishield vaccine? Covishield की vaccine लगी है ना? They are one of the develop. They are the CEOs of Pfizer, one of the guys who started developing the Covishield vaccine. BioNTech ka CEO is Ugur Sahin, another COVID vaccine which they started developing. Right? So leaders don't have to have anything. So Albert Bourla I remember as an example because this example is June. This is March. No, this is June 2020. You guys can Google up the period. India, we were on lockdown in June 2020. And if you guys were watching the news, New York was going through the phase of COVID tragedy. There were like literally thousands of people being affected and hundreds were dying in New York, and US have went through its horrible first wave of COVID infections. And that was a time when Albert Bourla, in his role as CEO of Pfizer का नाम सुना आपने? The that company that makes drugs and medicines. So he said that I will, as the CEO, authorize $1 billion for research and development of making a new COVID vaccine. And I am prepared to lose the full $1 billion. That was the risk that he was prepared to take in order to mobilize his company's resources to developing a COVID vaccine. And if you look at from March 2020, we went into lockdown. By June 21, I had had my second vaccine dose. Already had that second dose by June 21. That was how rapid the development of Covaxin or COVID vaccines had been. And everybody who was developing a COVID vaccine was taking a gamble of millions of dollars. Because if it didn't work, then all the R&D and all the money has gone down the drain. So leadership here doesn't have to mean that you are always a leader, but you can also be a leader for people. You can also be a leader for perspectives. You can also be a leader for new products, new innovations, and new services. So from me, this is the learning part which I had to give. This is the last 15 minutes I keep for question and answers. So in case you guys have any questions, you can ask and we can settle up. But otherwise, I am happy that at least even with a small number of people, we had lots of examples coming in. So let's see how and when we have the next class, and we'll take it up. Probably we'll be starting with unit 2 in the next class, and then we'll take it up from that point onwards. Okay, thank you. Off कर दिया? कर लो बेटा, मैं आपको ये नोट शेयर कर दूंगा, उसमें मुझे कोई इशू नहीं है.